Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Behind the Human. I'm your host, Mark Champagne, and it's my job to unpack the stories and mental fitness practices of people living at the top of their game, personally and professionally. Today, we're jamming with Jesse, who began his journey at the age of 14 when he started alongside Sidney Poitier in Children of the Dust, launching an acting career that would later include prominent roles in Netflix, Black Summer, and My Life with the Walter Boys. Beyond acting, Jesse has established himself as a powerful voice for change through his Make It Awkward campaign against discrimination, while also becoming a best-selling author and sought-after motivational speaker focused on leadership and inclusion. His latest book, The Art of Doing, is a guide to getting motivated, getting unstuck, and getting things done. Who are you?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a great question. I think I got two separate answers for that. My first answer would be a professional passion follower. I tried to, since I left university, went to Morehouse in Atlanta, Georgia. Well, I really wanted to, I had discussions with folks, some were retired, and majority of the people who were like, what are you going to do when you're retired? And they talk about all the things that they wanted to do. They wanted, like, now I can do this thing and this thing. And I was like, why would I want to wait? Why would I want to wait? So that moment decided that I'm going to follow all of my passion and try to find a way to do it professionally, to make money doing it. Because everything I love doing, someone somewhere has done it in a way and has made money doing it. Why not? So that became kind of the beginning of my professional passion following journey. But then on a whole deeper level, I think, or a different level, you say, who am I? My answer would be that I am you, Mark. I am the stranger in here. They're all me. I really do not see a difference other than this skin flesh mobile that we're in, but this idea that we are literally the same. We're how I treat you is how I'm treating myself. And just the idea of this whole consciousness existing as one, experiencing life in its own way, always intrigues me. And I really, really feel like that's something that I like to live, you know? Yeah, that's who I am.
When did that whole realization spark for you? Like, was there a moment? Was there some reflection around that? Because that's,
Yeah.
we don't come out of the gate with that kind of perspective.
I'd say that I've always had a little bit of an idea about this, but it's just funny because what my answer is something that got removed out of the book. They're like, I don't know if we could talk about this, Jesse, but I'll talk about it here. So
Yeah.
many years ago, there is a psychedelic called DMT.
Yeah.
Many folks have talked about it, and I had myself a little guided journey with it. And I remember when after I had taken my DMT, I got this like dream state where all I could see was water everywhere. And I knew that it was a drop of water on the end of, let's call it a branch. So that was what I was aware of. There was an ocean that went on forever, and I was this drop of water. And I was almost going to drop into the ocean. But every time I was about to leave the branch, I sucked it back up, but I didn't let myself drop. And that was the end. That was the end of it. And I was like, "Oh, this is silly. What if that? That was going to be something amazing." Years later, it just hit me, and I woke up. I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" I was trying so hard to hang on to this idea that I was special, that I was different than the entire body of water, and I wanted to keep that form. And if only I would have dropped. And I was so mad at myself after I thought about what would have happened if I just let myself drop and exist as a piece of everything. And so then I decided at that moment, all I would do is try to drop. Basically, try to drop ego, try to drop this idea that I'm different than anyone else, than just exist in this world where I know I am the same as everyone else. So if I learn something, they should have it too, and vice versa. And that's kind of where that whole thing kind of solidified for me.
Wow.
It's a curious little psychedelic trip that turned into a life-changing moment, like it does for many.
Yeah. So what was it about? You mentioned it was a couple years that, that I guess the reflection or the insight actually surfaced, or the dots started to connect. Do you know what helped that happen?
It's probably just, I mean, I remember it was just, I was talking about it with somebody. And as I explained it, I said to myself, like, I know that I was the water, and I knew the water was part of who I was. And I was just so afraid to lose what I knew. And I'm like, as I start talking about, I'm literally talking about my own ego and my own like sense of like, I want to make sure everyone knows I'm special and I'm me, to the point of I'm not at all. Or
Yeah.
I am as much as everybody else. When I said it, it felt so true. It rang so true that, and it still does to this day. So it's something that I feel pretty confident on living as a true line. This idea that we're not that different, and not different is like the easy way of saying that we're not different at all. The same stardust. You know what I mean? Like it's just
Yeah, yeah.
it's such a freeing experience to know that, and also like a uber loving one too. Like I can look at a stranger and say I love you, and I mean it. You know, it feel good.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I
But
ask these questions because, actually, by the time people hear this episode, because we're recording it fairly close to the release date, the episode right before this is actually an intro to a series that's dropping on Behind the Human called Demystifying Psychedelics. So it's really well timed in the sense that, and I don't know if, your obviously your past history with psychedelics, but I can only speak from my side. I'm pretty naive to the whole space and just very curious. I've had one guided experience with a psychologist in ketamine, but that's kind of it. And had just noticed that there's just seems to be so many people getting so much benefit, but then at the same time seeing all these headlines that are like, you know, you can't believe any of this stuff. It's kind of, the context is like, you know, you take a weekend and like change your entire life, which I'm like, well, that doesn't sound like, you know, it seems too good to be true. So I linked up with someone else, my co-host Paul Vincent, and who is deep in this work and is embeds in tribes and so forth. And it's just been, Jesse, such a fascinating experience to realize like the medicine is like this much of that whole journey, and just there's
yeah,
so much wisdom and transfer and tradition and integration, but then like, you know, just setting up practices beforehand and so forth. So I'm always interested in understanding, you know, when you come out of these experiences, like, are there journaling practices or
mhm.
questions that you like try to keep it alive, right? Be
Yeah, I
like,
mean, for
okay,
sure. Yeah. And I think I'm always different with everybody and what they choose to do with it. But like for me, for sure, you know, I journals a ton about it.
yeah,
I wrote this little piece called "The Journey to We," like this idea of losing self and just
mm,
becoming a we. Um, and you know, I would revisit it all the time and read it. But yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of all the different versions of learning. You know, I haven't done a ton of them. You know, a lot of my friends have done their ayahuasca journeys and talked about them, and some have done their mushroom guided journeys, all of the above. But I mean, a lot of these things have been around for so long, right? So long.
yeah,
So it's not
literally like the beginning of time.
right,
It's
you know?
wild.
So it's not like this isn't a new fad per se. It's
No,
often
no,
is the case with westernized civilizations. um, yeah, you know, I'm here and to trust in things that have happened since the beginning of time. And every animal on earth is also involved some way
yeah,
into it. Anything that can unlock secrets to make me a little bit better, I'm here for it.
totally. But our book publishing friends, that was a little too on edge, I guess,
It
for them,
was,
right?
yeah. They're like, maybe in your next book, or maybe like if you do a new version, but we'll keep it out of this one. But
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
supposed to
fair
be in
enough.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, let's before we get into the book, like I just love to know, like your journey seems so vast is the word that comes to mind. Like, I mean, I know it's all interconnected in ways, but you know, you've from my understanding, I don't know you super well other than preparing for this conversation, but you know, you've crushed it in many different industries where, you know, many people they'd go down the acting career as an example and like stay in that kind of swim lane and do their best and so forth. And it sounds like you started in that world, and there's entrepreneurship kind of woven in, there's speaking, there's, you know, obviously, you know, writing books on your second book now. Like, I guess, where did it start, and where are you at right now?
Yeah, I would say, you know, it started with this. Like I started as an athlete, I'd say,
Yeah,
you know, as I was followed my sister and brother, and they were in sports, so I did sports, right? And a lot of it at the early stage was following dopamine and
sure.
not trying to force decisions. I think a lot of that was. So I think, you know, I was athletically gifted, so it made sense that I played, and that was fine. And then, you know, there were opportunities that came up, and my willingness to say yes to them, I think, was a huge
Okay.
one. And saying yes, not with a preconceived idea of what the yes will do. It was just like, yes, I will try this thing. And if I would say like the bottom line was fearlessness in the sense of saying yes. So the courage to try stuff that on paper, maybe one to say, "Oh, you're not ready for this," or "You don't have experience in it." None of that was ever a part of my decision making process.
Mm.
So
Who
it's
was
all
modeling that for you, Jesse? Because I mean, that's pretty. I don't know. That's high emotional intelligence, in my opinion, at a young age.
a lot of it had to do not necessarily modeling per se, but more so. I mean, obviously my parents did. My dad's an artist. His stuff is
Okay.
juried in art galleries. My uncle, the late Brett Miles, is a jazz musician who played with Taylor Dane and Michael Jackson and Miles Davis.
Okay.
Or like they're my great great auntie Betsy Coleman, the first Black woman to fly an airplane. There's a lot of people
Wow.
that you grew up knowing and from
Yeah.
a family that were just doing things they loved, that weren't necessarily the typical things that everyone does. So I think
Yeah.
right off the bat, it's see that you can be successful in things you love and are passionate. There wasn't a lot of people in my world that people only complained about work. They were doing what they love to do. So I think that area of modeling for sure, but more
Yeah.
specifically, my parents were always okay with me trying as long as I tried my hardest, right? So they are like, if this is what you want to do, we support it, but we also want to be work your ass off, whatever that is. So a combination of seeing the success and then also having a support system, family that were cheerleading whatever wild ideas I had, and most of them didn't work, right? But I got
Yeah.
better. I got better at trying,
Yeah.
and I think that's a huge skill. This idea of like I try better than I used to. So I just better.
Sure. So the early life was there was athletics and acting, because acting was around 14 or so, and then I'm assuming you were playing sports at that age as well. And
Yeah, I started early
um,
sports, like early. I did gymnastics, went to the Junior Olympics. Then when I was 9, I was tied as the highest jumping 9-year-old that's ever been on earth, which is cool. So from
oh,
there, I
that's
went
cool.
downhill. I went downhill from there. I
Okay.
was, I think I ended my grad career with my best of being like number 6 in the world, which is pretty dope. It's a some track athlete. Acting started in my teens, somewhat accidental, but still worked out, and that became a key bit. And then I started speaking right after that because, I got a full scholarship. So schools would have me come back or talk. And so this early speaking days happened when I was like 18, 19.
Oh,
I
wow.
opened, yeah, and then I started opening up Ivy League in Atlanta, Georgia. Entrepreneurial side started around then.
Okay.
All of it just kept beating on each other of like, I love this thing. Other people have done it. It's funny, actually. There was this movie called The Edge with Alec Baldwin and Anthony Hopkins. And I was Harold Perrineau's stunt double in it. But in the movie, there's this one scene where Alec Baldwin's talking to Anthony Hopkins, and he's about to kill a bear. And then I remember him sitting on set, and he said, "What one man can do, another can do." And then Alec would say it again. He said, "What one man could do, another can do." They did it 3 times. I was just watching. First off, there's legend, so they just.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what they were saying stuff with me still to this day. Absolutely, like someone's doing it. They're a human, it's like me. They took some steps and now they're crushing. So I would find things I want to do. And I'm like, I don't know the steps, let me ask. If no one can help me, let me experiment. And it became a life of playing and experimenting. And it's been
Mhm.
so net positive that I can't see me changing it. It's really fun. New things show up and new experiences, and some of them work out. And even when they don't, they still do.
Yeah. I love it. So I mean, it was like live mentorship without,
Yeah.
you maybe even realizing it at the moment, right? That's just like you're picking it up. And how did you even get into acting? Like, how did that start?
Okay. Yeah. So 1994, there was a classified ad in the newspaper. Back in the day, they used to do these cattle calls. So it said it was looking for like a teenager, African American, male, loud, obnoxious, fun. Mom's like, Jesse, you should try it.
That's you.
That's you. So
That's awesome.
stage I had done. I'd taken drama classes. I don't think I've ever expressed any of that. Um, but I said yes, I'll try it. And my mom really wanted me to try my best, so she bribed me, as a good mother does. She's like, "I'll get you." So I played marbles. Then I love playing marbles. And there's a store called Elephants Never Forget for amazing marbles. And she's like, "I'll give you a jumbo ski leaf from Elephants Never Forget. I can hear you in the lobby. Drink your condition to make you shy. Was a beastly shy." So I went in, I did it. And a couple of days later, I got a phone call from like Jesse Lipscombe, come to the office. So I went to the office, and then it was producer of the TV show Children of the Dust, and they offered me the role playing Sidney Poitier's son. And right off the jump, I had Sidney as a mentor. Man, it was
Wow.
amazing. I mean, and he stayed with my mentor for some time until he passed a few years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
Luck. It was
incredible.
just luck, but luck, we say, but also it was a yes. Just a yes. My mom,
Well,
it's like she's the queen of like looking up and making like, hey, this could be great. Still takes a loss. And so,
yeah.
yeah, that yes changed my whole life for sure.
Well, I think that's the big one, right? And I know the latest book has a lot to do with this around like you've got to make the moves, right? It's because I'm sure you're not the only one that saw that classified ad, or maybe it was obviously your mom was also supporting and pushing and so forth. But again, I'm sure there are other parents too, and like I think like many of us in life, like we see these things or we get these signs and whatnot, and we just walk right past them,
Yes.
right? And I think there are many reasons for that, but the big thing is like you've got to take the step, right? And I remember in researching this, like even your second book, and I'm in the phase where I'm really thinking of the second book on my side as well, and so this really lands. But it's like you talk about it until like you got to start writing, right? And I feel like as having written one, I'm like it's got to be oozing out of me because I know it's hard. It's so hard. Right. But you got to make the moves or nothing happens.
Okay, so wait, let me rewind for a sec. So for you, what did you find hard about writing your book?
I just find the actual writing itself. And I'm actually quite curious because when I wrote the first book, even though it hasn't been that long, about 3-4 years ago, just even having an AI assistant to help, formulate ideas and like tease things out, I think would be a completely different experience. But I just remember writing, and I think you had some of this as well. Like I had other, like, obviously, as you know, the books, especially at the beginning, it's not like they're paying the bills, right? So I'm writing this book at 5 a.m. before doing the stuff that feeds the family.
Yeah.
And I found it some days beautiful and a lot of days like I'm stuck here. I don't know where to go here. And you, at least for me, start looping in these self-doubt narratives of like who the hell am I to be writing this?
Oh
Like,
man,
is
that's
anyone
all the
going to read
time.
this, right?
So I would say that was the biggest one for me too. Was always like, I was like, right, I think it's a great idea. Then at the next day, I'd be like, why am I doing this? And even when I got a book deal, like the first one was just it's a science fiction book, and I was writing it, and it was a story I really loved. So I could always like
Yeah.
lean on that. I'm like, I love this story, and I know I'm going to turn this into a movie, and like I have my own idea, so I could shut up my negative mind
Yeah.
there. But this nonfiction book, even though HarperCollins paid me to write a book, maybe did I fool them? Like, should I
Yeah.
be?
Yeah.
Yeah, that happened all the time. The reason I asked why you thought it was hard, you're 8 years into a podcast. Like that's the king
Yeah.
of consistency, and the hardest thing in the
Yeah.
world is just consistency. Like I always say, it's simple, but it's not easy. It's simple. Of course, you have an hour a day, you'll have a book done, no problem. But it's just that idea of becoming consistent, doing the thing. I have to applaud you. In 8 years of a podcast, it's ridiculous.
Well, thank you. No, I received. Thank you. I think if like if I guess what comes up for me is knowing the effort it takes to write a book just across the board. There's writing, there's promoting it, all of that stuff, obviously. But I don't want to half-ass it, I guess is what I'm saying. So I know that okay, well there's a few different businesses that I'm running. It's not like I have this giant chunk of time that's like, oh, that's where I can do this. So I think it's okay, it's gonna take some reprioritization. Something obviously is gonna have to give. And I want, like, how it is when you're really into any project, and I find definitely with writing, it's like when you're walking to go to the washroom, you're like, oh, that's the line right there, and it's like literally word by word that you're right. I need to be at that stage, and I feel like the last 3 months I'm there, so it almost scares me to
Yeah.
be honest, because
It
I know
does take
it's
over.
there.
It takes over once it's happening. But I
Yeah,
also tell folks too, like, they want to half-ass it. I'm like, fair, but you could also fill in the other. It, like, it's
yeah, yeah.
okay not to be
You're right.
fully. People wait for, I want to be motivated. I want to feel inspired. But like there might be 50 days that go by where you're only a little bit motivated, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if you still put a little bit down, it's easy to go back and edit stuff. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I
Totally.
don't know. I
Good
feel like a
point.
lot of us wait for the perfect time to start or to get going again. And then you're just waiting on like a shooting star when you could literally make a dope ass book or whatever project and go back and edit it when you feel motivated, you know?
Yeah. No, I do resonate with the feeling motivated piece. Like that's not I think that's the fiction in the book writing process of, there's elements that are motivating, of course, but to your point, like it is just showing up and writing, and one day is going to be great, the other day is not so great, who knows, and you've got to flow with it, but you've got to keep going.
Well, it's funny, real quick on that too. I remember I was just talking. So I just finished a musical over the Christmas holidays, and then I got my first shipment of my books. And I remember I got the
Yeah.
books that day, felt really cool, unwrapping them, looking at them, and then the musical was done. And then the next day, I had like a lull, and I was just like, why am I feeling down? Everything's really good right now, and it reminded me that like the goal is to write a book, or the goal is to produce a song, or the goal is to whatever the goal, like when you actually achieve it, it's so short living, that
Yeah.
good feeling. But like I was saying, the joy was the years of making it. Like I was like, this is exactly what the art of doing. Like I think I
Yeah.
just love making and creating. And I know that I'll hit the goal, but that thing's only going to give me a blip of fun. Like when my new TV
Totally.
show comes out and you get a little blip, people are like, hey, it's great, but then it's over. But like the joy was
Yeah.
making the thing.
Well, it's the joy, and I feel like as you're saying that, what was coming to mind too is it's almost like when you have a really awesome vacation lined up. It's like the anticipation
Oh
of it
yeah,
as well,
big
and
time,
like,
big time.
oh, I'm gonna, we're gonna do. But you're right, like, and not to say that obviously when it happens, it's not full of joy. But to your point, if you really zoom out, it's really just a small portion of that project's overall lifespan.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah, big time. I know planning vacations, planning whatever excursion you may end up canceling or not doesn't matter, but just like the idea
yeah,
and just sitting there and visualizing it, that's so much of the fun, which is also so much of the fun is
totally,
just making our projects, right? Like what could it be?
totally.
What might it?
Totally. So how did this latest book, how did it come to be? Like, what was it that I know you mentioned you've been speaking about the topic, the art of doing for many years, but like, what was it for you that was like, okay, it's time to, pen and paper.
So pandemic started it for me. So in the pandemic,
Okay.
I friend of mine was going through some stuff. His name's Ethan, and we're talking about, man, I should write a book one day. And whenever anyone says that to Jesse, it's like, oh, you said it. You said it. So I went online and researched some stuff, and there was this grant, but the grant was due in like 30 days. So I'm like, dude, I know you're competitive. 30 days, you got to get your books out. And so we had to write, I don't know, 2,500 words a day or whatever it was. And he did it. He finished it. And after he finished it, now I hadn't written a book yet. And I've always talked about, I should write a book. Now I'm sitting there, two things happen. One, my friend did the challenge, and I'm like, okay, he could do it, I can do it. And then second,
Yeah.
he's like, no, if I don't do it now, and I've been lying to myself all this time, pandemic. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna write a book. So I wrote my first book, and then I reached out to my agent and said, hey, do you know any book publishers? Because I'd love to get it published properly. And he's like, I got a connection with HarperCollins is Penguin. And so, I fast forward, I had a meeting with a publicist at HarperCollins. I brought them my manuscript and sat down, and he says, oh, I don't do fiction. But since Jeff, here, I'll pass it on to my fiction guy. He passes it on, they pass on it, but they gave me a bunch of notes. So they said, no, it's not good enough for them, and here's why. So I'm like, all right, that's a win. Took it back, fixed the notes, published it with a different company. And then I guess that was that. And then I'm like, this doesn't feel right. Feels like I missed something. And then they called me back and said, hey, Jesse, we were looking at your script, your speeches, and we did some research on you, and we think we want to do a nonfiction title with you. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm listening first. We started
that that doesn't happen every day.
point tested, right? Yeah. And so we started the book off with something that was different. The book was going to be called How to Be a Little Less Racist. It was deep in the DEI world. And then that book shifted to us wanting to create an evergreen book that was more encompassing of everything that I do. And we ended up with this. But the funny part is like, you know, only because I was asking. I'm like, hey, is there somewhere can I take a meeting? I flew myself to Toronto for the meeting on my own dime to find out that he didn't want a fiction book, thinking that no was the end of the
Yeah.
line, but actually that was the beginning of this one, which is super cool. So yeah.
Well, it again comes right. I mean, perfectly titled book, obviously, as you know, because I mean, again, like those are all action steps that you took, right? Like to your point, I mean, not everything, led to, or not everything, I guess, realized the expectations you had in that moment, but they all moved you forward and ultimately kind of put together the journey that you're on right now.
100%.
By the time this airs, the book actually will be out, or it will be 2 days from. It's coming out this coming Tuesday, right?
Yeah, that's right. On the 7th. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's always a Tuesday with
Always a
with the
Tuesday.
traditional publisher. It's awesome. So this is airing Sunday, obviously. So depending on when you pick this up, the book is either a couple days from being out or already out. I'd love to, as we went back and forth on Instagram on this. Like normally, I read the books before I have authors coming on, but some of you, any Canadians listening, and frankly even Americans, because you're affected by this too. We had a lovely postal strike for about 4+ weeks, right in the holidays. So all to say, the question I have is, as we pick up this book and navigate through the chapters and the beautiful words that flowed out of your mind, how how do you think we're going to feel at the end of the book, or what's the
Yeah.
expectation that you have?
I mean, my hope is that you read a book from someone that you can relate to in several different spots, right? I mean, like I feel like I'm a regular dude who was afforded extraordinary things, all right? And so it's not someone coming from the top of the hill in a $10 million mansion telling you
Yeah,
how to make $10 million, right? Like
yeah.
that's not
Live from Tim Hortons,
fair. I'm
right?
at Tim Hortons in Deep River, Ontario, where I wrote some of the book.
Yeah.
But the cool part is it's like how I think you'll leave feeling like, oh, these dreams and passions are way closer than I thought. So I'll say we're
Mm,
further away. I thought they might not been for me. I thought I needed more time. I thought I needed all these external things in order to make the things happen that I put on the shelf. And after you're done, like also, no, I can actually do all of these things as well. I can still embrace, adventure and change and passion and dreams and still be able to do my regular to-do list and not have to throw everything to the side like I thought. The hope is it becomes acceptable, get a little excited about it.
mm.
And then, I mean, it's memoirs, autobiography, and then also some tools and tips, but in a way that were tried and true, right? So like, here's how
Yeah,
I used them. Here's where I messed up and should have used it. There's some funny stories about some famous folks we all know. It's a little bit of everything, right?
sure.
There's a lot of tea in the book. Some of it wasn't all allowed to be in it, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, I like, even because I mean, essentially, I feel like I've felt some of it already, or you pushed me even on like my book concept, right? Around the idea of, oh, well, wait a second. Like, I wouldn't say from the motivation standpoint, like I know that's a bit of an illusion, but I forget the exact words, but it's definitely lingering in my mind where it's like, well, you don't have to be like all in right now to start, right? And that's a good point. Like, why have I made this kind of construct around I have to have a certain amount of time to, give my best effort and have to reorganize everything versus just having a different version of that, I guess
oh
you could
man,
say,
it's so
right?
key because that version I feels unfair to you. Because what happens is you've decided you need this perfect setup to start. And so then you can wait, and it's a real excuse. It feels like it's there, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't have time, but I said I needed this much time and like focus. But then you get to that spot. Now look at the pressure you have on you. Now this is the only, so it has to happen,
Yeah.
right? Like when in reality, it can happen throughout all of those things,
Yeah.
and folks who are doing like their first thing, like, get it out of the way. It's gonna be your worst. It doesn't mean it's gonna be bad.
Yeah.
It's probably gonna be your worst version. So get
Totally.
your worst version out of the way so you can get your second and third and fourth going, and then it becomes habitual. And it's no longer
Yeah.
even a push. It's just like, oh, I have a couple of minutes, I'll put it down. Organization is key. That does help a lot, right? Like
Yeah.
random post-it notes versus having folders in your phone. To each their own. But like there's
Sure.
no yesterday's perfect time to do everything.
Yeah. Well, I just love it because I've already wrote a damn book. So it's like, this is not like it's the first time, but it's again, I just, and I only say that because, we're all human and we're all working on interesting things. We all have our own kind of limiting beliefs floating around in our minds. And I think often it's not necessarily that we need some brand new perspective. We need a reminder of
Mhm.
something that we know, right? Because
Absolutely.
we get the opposite of the reminders that we need from social media and all this comparison and all the craziness that's happening in the world. That like conversations and people like yourself, like at least for me, I needed that reminder, and I'm sure many listening needed as well,
Yeah.
for whatever the project is, right?
100%. I agree with, I mean, even same with myself. This book has helped me write this book. This book has helped me through other
Yeah,
thoughts myself. Because it is that reminder all the time, I think, that happens. It's so easy to get in our head and create a new construct. Like, like I wrote a book before, and then I'm like, I should be able to, also, no, I don't have, that's not real. I can actually just
yeah,
do, yeah, I made that up. I made that up and it felt right and I lived in it. Yeah, but it is nice to see other folks like, you know how to get in shape, Jesse. You know how to do it. You lift something heavy
yeah,
and put it on or run with tires, like, tell what to do. Sometimes this
totally.
needs to be packaged properly, in a way that gives you a little bit of a push.
Well, and I think we need the pause too, like, and just some time to ask. The question that comes to mind is one I journal on often. It's just like, what am I pretending not to know?
Yeah,
Right? Like in the exercise way, like it's again, we know. I mean, it's not super complicated around like what's coming, what are you putting into your body, how are you moving? Like it's not that complicated, but it's one of the hardest things that I think most, myself included,
what I'd say
face.
one of the biggest pieces on this is there's a thing, like, it sounds simple, but, like, looking in the mirror at the end of the day and being able to say, "I'm proud of you and I love you." Those are
Yeah,
so hard to do because no one's there. So, like, "I'm proud of you" is like your mind goes like, "Wait, here's all the reasons you shouldn't." And then when you're like, "I love you," it's like, "Well, yeah, but what about when you did this?" Right? But when
yeah,
you start to do that and can do it and mean it, find that a lot of that say get negative self-talk disappears. All of a sudden you see yourself in a different way. But it's this, as corny as it sounds, I'm corny. I'm a cornball anyway. So like loving
yeah,
yourself is such a huge piece and being able to attack some of these goals and dreams. Because we often are like, maybe that's not for me. And we believe it. It's for this other person who I don't know, but it looks like, all of that stuff.
yeah,
Yeah. I think that's a huge chunk of starting with accepting and loving where you are right now, no matter what,
yeah.
no matter where.
It's so powerful, and I mean, we typically easily do that for others, especially with our kids and friends and people that we really respect. Like we say those things, we genuinely mean it. But to your point, it's like, I mean, I challenge everyone listening or watching, try that, in the mirror to yourself. Like
Hmm. Yeah.
it's,
Take it
you
home. Like,
started like, holy shit, okay,
even when you think about it now, it's like, and so how fast our brain fills in the reasons. Like, geez,
yeah,
I'm not the
yeah,
nicest to myself. I'm not. Ooh.
yeah. Yeah, and just like anything, it's a practice, right? So just, be, I think, kind to ourselves, don't judge it ourselves, and just
Right.
keep working at it. But I do agree with you. I mean, and I think from that place too, and there's been enough people on the show that I think have validated this well, is that once you get to that place, right, like stuff just starts to happen.
Hmm.
All
Hmm.
right, you start seeing opportunities, people start calling and whatnot. It's like, we this show, thankfully, there's no level of woo woo that we can't cross. So
Cool. Yeah.
it's all good on this side. But I mean, I feel like when you're in that state, when you're feeling good about yourself, you're sending out good vibes. The energy is right, right? And I say that because a lot of people that are listening, they're doing awesome things in this world, and and myself included, it's like I just want to make sure our ripple effect is at the max,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it starts with us.
It does. It does. And we can
Yeah,
answer so many of the questions. It's like a domino effect of whys. Like that idea of like, all right, here's why I am feeling not proud of myself. Right. There's the answer. You can go there and fix it. Oh, like, well, why is that hard to do? Okay. Well, then we can go and fix it. Like there's so many pieces that we
yeah,
have the answers to, but we don't listen to ourselves. Right. Like we actually
yeah,
listen externally and we look externally. We're like, who can motivate me? Who can train me? Who will teach me? Who will take me? When we could flip that all around. Like actually all the answers are inside. The only reason I'm stuck with them because I hit this road, which might be self-talk, or it might be, I'm embarrassed or I'm carrying shame or
yeah,
I have a disability or I have all of the things. They're right there.
totally.
And it's like, let's just do one thing at a time. Doing all of them at a
Yeah.
time, that's where it becomes like, don't do all of it.
Yeah.
Let's do a little chunk. It's a little
Totally.
piece.
Totally. What's I'm gonna start wrapping up here. I just want to respect your time, but if you think of the book, what's one practice or ritual or activity or perspective that, just given the time of year, we're just starting a brand new year. Frankly, doesn't matter when you pick up this conversation, you can treat it as the brand new year. We always have that opportunity to start something fresh or new. Is there something that comes to mind from the book that would be helpful for people knowing where we're at right now?
You know, probably, but the first thing that jumps into my mind is there's probably something at the beginning of last year that we said we were going to do.
Mm.
And there's a good chunk of folks who didn't do the thing. Right. And so you can be like, oh, I'm never doing these New Year's resolutions again. They don't have to work. They just makes me upset because I failed them. Whatever that thing is, I'd be like, let's grab that. Let's grab that thing and let's rework it. Let's just fully rework it. Let's look at what we learned last time by why we didn't do the thing. And then
Yeah.
let's strategically try and do it this time with just new information. We have new information. And one of the things in the book that I find one of the easiest ways to do that is, instead of saying, here's what I'm going to do, like I said, pick a date in the year that it'll be done by. Pick any date and then work the way, right? So it's a little project. What stuff do I have to do? Make a list of all the stuff you have to do for that thing to happen. And then you start putting those in by week. And they get smaller and smaller. They become these little micro things. Instead of a macro, it's like, what's the next easiest thing I can do? And now you don't even have to think about the big thing. You've already mapped it out. That means if it's only 5 minutes a day, I'm like, I feel confident. That is a part of the goal. I don't have to think about the big goal. I've already chopped it into bite-sized pieces. And it really helps the efficacy of hitting your goals. Like that one simple thing, actually putting it in a calendar with a date and then listing the things you have to do and then make them to-do lists.
I like that. I like everything you said about that. I like the idea of reworking resolutions or intentions, like whatever the hell you want to call these things, but just the idea of, it feels lighter. Maybe like, because it's not from this place of oh, I failed, I didn't hit it or whatever. Like let's zoom up, just like for a book or script or whatever. Like let's rework the script. Let's take a look at the first draft. That's not where we're going to nail it. And see, and it kind of comes full circle with everything you've been talking about around the journey, obviously, right? And because there's a whole process there of just rich insight and knowledge and stuff like that just taking a few minutes to do that.
Absolutely.
And who knows, maybe you won't reach the exact outcome that you're looking for, but even just going through the process of it.
Yeah, I mean, and
You're
maybe
already ahead.
don't have one so specific. You know what I mean? Be okay with where
Yeah.
it takes you when you're working with integrity and heart and consistency.
Yeah.
And one of the things you said too, like you might fail or you might have failed. I am a firm believer that you can't fail at something. You have two
Yeah.
options. You either quit or you die. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like if it didn't work, you could try it again. We can try it differently. Like there's no fail. You just keep trying different ways until you're like, I don't want to try anymore. And then you try something else. So it's either quit
Totally.
or stop breathing. But yeah, why not?
Yeah. What's for you? What's one big dream or intention you've got for the coming months?
Okay, so this is a funny one. I so want to get off the plane and I want to see this thing on the bestsellers shelf. I want to walk on that wall where the magazines and candy are. And I want people to buy that book they might not read, but you buy the book on the plane, you just
Yeah. Totally.
I want to be someone's vacation books in January. That's like my goal. It's been a goal before the book was made. And I know there's big loftier goals for books, but I just want the airport wall and I want to see someone buy it, read it or not. I just want it to be a vacation book that'll be in someone's Instagram picture.
I love it. Well, come on, listeners. Jesse's a good guy. We've been hanging for what now, 40 minutes or so. Let's help him make that happen. I hang out in airports often enough as well, so I'd love to see that happen. And I think the other thing too is, I'm sure you've all experienced this in some capacity. You buy books like what you have examples of or been in situations like what you would describe. You buy the book, then it sits on the shelf. But then one day when the timing is right, you pick the book up and you're like, bam, and this is pure gold, right? So
you said yes
again,
with the purchase. That was the action, right?
Totally.
Yeah, and the next movement, you might read it. And once you read it, momentum. Or you just get the audiobook and I'll read it to you. It's easy.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start with that. I've already got it saved on Spotify. So Jesse, man, thank you so much for making time. Thanks for finding good internet over at Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons, if you're listening, you can send us some goodies at any point. As
you,
proud
Timmy.
Canadians over here. And thanks for, I say thanks for the time, of course, but a higher thank you for the work that you put in this world and just constantly showing up for yourself, your family, your people that are supporting you. So, because like that's the stuff that I think allows you to keep doing what you're doing, and the ripple effect of your work is, you can't even calculate that. It's exponential. So thank you for the work that you put into this world.
Appreciate your Mark, and thanks for this platform.
Marketing is hard. But I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't have to be. Let me point something out. You're listening to a podcast right now, and it's great. You love the host. You seek it out and download it. You listen to it while driving, working out, cooking, even going to the bathroom. Podcasts are a pretty close companion. And this is a podcast ad. Did I get your attention? You can reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a pre-produced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience in their favorite podcasts with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com, that's LIBSYN, ads.com today.